following is a presentation of the Belly Up Sports Media Network.
14:20 in the morning, 14 minutes and 20 seconds where the sports talk to get you through your daily commute. Hot takes, recaps, best bets, and a little humor to get your day going in the right direction. Sit back, grab your coffee, and let's get into it. All right, 14:20 in the morning for this March the 14th, Pi Day. 3.14. Get it? I'm a funny guy. Anyways, today's show is brought to you by Barn Burner Hockey and barnburnerhockey.ca. Use promo code 1420barn at barnburnerhockey.ca for 10% off their all-natural hockey products and apparel today at barnburnerhockey.ca. The board of, thank you for joining us every morning here on Facebook Live and on Twitter and YouTube, wherever you're watching the show. Thank you very much for tuning in on a daily basis and listening to the podcast later on throughout the day. It's greatly appreciated. Anyways, the NHL Board of Governors is meeting right now, I think in Boca Raton, somewhere in Florida. They're having their annual meetings to see the problems of the National Hockey League world and trying to fix them all at once and everything that goes on in the world of hockey. The game's in a pretty good spot right now with the way it's being played, but there is some issues that do happen on a regular basis throughout the National Hockey League. There is the one thing that they are looking at. It's the instigator penalty, that they want to increase the penalty a little bit because there's been 271 scraps this year. 100 of those 271 fights have been from a guy defending the honor of the National Hockey League and or defending guys that they say got hit and everything else. So they're trying to get rid of those fights, and out of those 100 fights that happened because of the defending of the honor, that they deemed 89% of those hits were clean hits, and there was no need for anything to happen. So the instigator penalty has only been called 11 times out of those 100 times, and they want to get the situation where there is hitting in the game, and they bring that back and having fights for the sake of fighting. They're trying to get rid of that in the National Hockey League, and the problem that they have is that they're going to get some pushback from the Players Association for the simple reason that if you get 3 of these penalties throughout the season, you're going to get suspended for a couple of games. That's money out of your pocket, right? So they don't like that. The thing with a instigator penalty, you get 2, 5, and a 10, not just the regular 5 minute for fighting, right? So you get the extra 12 minutes in penalties. They're thinking about maybe going to a little bit more of a penalty to get away from the stage fights, not stage fights. We'll get to that in a half a second too, because that was a bit of a joke the other night with Ryan Reeves. But anyways, we'll talk about that in a second. But it's a bit of a troubling thing. You do see a big hit in the National Hockey League, which there isn't a lot of anymore. The game is just different. It's a faster game and everything else. There's no stopping and starting and but when there is a nice big hit that is clean, a fight pretty much ensues every time, as the stats say there, that it's 89 out of 100 times that there are these clean hits that someone's defending someone's honor. There's an automatic fight, and I think they've really got to try to get away from that because it takes away from that. I'm not saying we need fighting back in the game like it was back in the 80s and 90s, because that was complete mayhem, but having the odd scrap here and there when it's required, if fighting is actually ever required, is another story for another day. But having these fights really takes away from the action of a hockey game, because if a guy gets hit and then there's a fight and then there's the stoppage of play and on it goes, and it drags things on a little bit, and then there's the conversations with the referees, the instigating and everything else, and then so it does slow the game down a bit, where if a guy gets hit, gets up, dusts himself off, and see you later, and that's how I think it should be. And if the NHL is looking at this and maybe tell the referees, hey, maybe you guys need to call this a little bit more, I think that's something that they should look at. And maybe the referees just aren't calling it because they don't need the hassle from the bench or from the players later on saying, yeah, that shouldn't have been 2, 5, and a 10. That was just, a guy got hit. It was a little bit dirty. So it comes, and that's the tough thing about being an official in a hockey game. It's the discretionary calls and stuff that isn't really right, and you don't know the discretion of down to two people, because it's such a fast game and there's so much happening, and for it to have to make those calls can be really tough. And referees definitely have a tough go of things to see it. It's a really tough job to do, and to be able to see everything is really tough. And the instigator penalty, that maybe it's just a discretionary call. Yeah, I thought he scrapped, and it's clear as day that these fights happen on a regular basis. When a guy gets leveled and the fight happens, it's clear as day that who the instigator is every time. It's not it's not the hitter, it's the guy who's watching the hit happen, right? And so that's something that should be an easy call for an instigator, and to get that out of the game, to make those calls and suspend these guys for doing it. And if you hit them in the pocketbook, that's when people start to think, and that's in general in life. Like if you keep parking in the wrong spot and you keep getting tickets, eventually when it hits your pocketbook, you'll stop parking in those spots, right? It only stands to reason for those things. Another thing that they're looking at is the over the glass penalty, and I've been saying this for a long time since they brought it in, and somebody said it yesterday. I should start writing this stuff down, that when Brent's right, which isn't very often, but no, I'm often more often than not on this stupid show. In things in life, it's a different story. But on the 1420 podcast, I seem to get those things right. But the over the glass penalty has always been a thorn in my side. And it was Elliot Friedman, I think it was yesterday, saying on whatever show he was on, and he was talking about they're looking at the over the glass penalty and how to make it right, and maybe when to call it, when not to call it, and everything else. Because if you would hate for a power play to happen in the Stanley Cup playoffs, where a puck over the glass decided the winner of Lord Stanley's Cup. I think it's a ridiculous penalty. I think that it's stupid. I don't get it. I don't understand. Yeah, they wanted to keep the game going and get more power plays and get more scoring, but I don't think that's been that big of a deal over the years. And you would hate to see a Stanley Cup being decided, like I said, with a puck over the glass penalty, when it's blatantly the guy didn't mean to do it. Like this game is so fast. There's no way these guys have enough time 9 times out of 10 to even think about getting it over the glass. They're trying to just dump it off the glass, get it out of the zone before they get the puck taken away and everything else. There's a lot going on in the game of hockey on a minute-to-minute basis, and these guys, they don't have time to do that. And I don't think that they ever really try to. I mean, there are some blatant ones, I guess, and you could call them at the discretion of the referee, but if you put it in someone's hands, you never know what the call could be, because there are blatant ones, obviously, but that's 1 out of every 50 times, right? So 2% of the time where it is blatant one, it shouldn't be every time it goes over the glass. And the way it slows the game down too, because everything goes to replay, and the NHL replay has to be changed a little bit too. The game gets slowed down. Like there's goals that they look at for 5 or 6 minutes, and it slows the game down. There was that one in overtime the other night, Calgary and Minnesota, I think it was, and it took 4 or 5 minutes. Like it takes away from the pace of the game, especially in overtime where things are going and things are happening, and you slow things down and it gets going again. Yeah, you get back to people wanting the call to be right all the time. But sometimes getting the call right is at the expense of the flow of the game, and there's got to be a way they can do it. You look what happens in soccer with the World Cup with that technology that they had to see things the proper way and how it was done so quick. And you look at how tennis, how they get it done so quick with the. I mean, it's a different sports, but they should use technology a little bit better than a guy looking at an iPad in the penalty box. There's got to be a better way to do it, and have the guys in the ivory towers in New York making those calls and telling them as soon as they get to the penalty box and the referee skates over there, they know what the call is instantly, or an earpiece or something. There's got to be a way to speed up the instant replay process in hockey. We'll talk about baseball tomorrow, but I thought we get to a little bit of hockey talk today. But yeah, it's good that the NHL is looking at some things to try to improve the stuff that they have going on. The penalty thing for the fighting, that's got to happen with the big hits and the fights that ensue. And like I said, 89% of these hits were deemed to defend the honor, were deemed clean, right? So 89 out of 100 times, these guys are just fighting to defend the honor of a guy who got leveled at his head down or whatever it may be. And so if it's a clean hit, they should let it go and call it good. And the other night, like I don't know if anybody saw this, I think it was on Sunday night. It doesn't much matter what day it was, but Ryan Reaves and Boko Imama of the Arizona, Reaves of the Minnesota Wild, obviously, and Imama of the Arizona Coyotes, they got in a scrap. What happened was Reaves laid a guy out in the corner. Then he was standing beside the net. The play ensued. Imama came from the blue line, and he decided he wanted to fight, and he just said, well, okay, we're gonna go. And once again, it was a clean hit. Reaves just leveled this guy in the corner. He was standing there at the side of the net, minding his own business. Imama comes in from the blue line and says, we're gonna go. This looked like one of those stage fights from the 90s where they danced around, and it was actually embarrassing for the league and for Reeves and for Imama. They danced around for what seemed like an eternity, and then they dropped the gloves, took the helmets off the whole bit, and then they looked like there were two girls in a schoolyard fighting, slapping a little bit, and then they both just fell down. It was an embarrassment to the game. It was an embarrassment to hockey. It was an embarrassment to those two. It looked so bad. It was such a bad look for two guys, and the tough guys that they claim to be. Like Reeves is a tough guy. They're both tough. They both kicked the shit out of me, but it was a really bad look for the game of hockey. He was trying to stray away from those stage fights and everything else that was happening in the 90s, and the CTE and the concussions and the fighting, and they're really trying to get away from. Is there a place in the game for fighting still? Probably, but stuff like that needs to go away, and give those guys both instigator. Just throw them both out of the game. Say, we don't need that shit around here. You look stupid. You're disgracing the game, and I thought it was a complete embarrassment to the game of hockey, and I thought it was completely stupid. So there it is. There's the rant for the morning. Scrap the scrap. I did forget to click on the banner anyways for those of you watching on YouTube and Facebook. Yeah, it was ridiculous. I didn't understand it. I don't know why two guys of that stature would decide to do that. Nobody was hurt. The guy who got level was up and playing again. He was going. Yeah, he got hit. Who cares? It's part of the game. They sign up for it, and it was like I said, it was a clean hit, and it's just the way things go. So I don't know. It was a bad look for the game of hockey and those two gentlemen. I'm sure they don't give a shit what I think, but there's my thoughts for the day. Anyways, on this day in where are we here? On this day in 1967, Bubba Smith was taken first overall by the Baltimore Colts out of Michigan State. Smith went on to play 9 NFL seasons with the Colts, Raiders, and the Houston Oilers, winning 1 Super Bowl. And with Baltimore, the 2-time Pro Bowler might be better known for his role as Moses Hightower in the Police Academy movies of the 1980s. Those movies were quite funny. They kind of lost their luster a little bit later on as they went along, but the first couple were really funny. I like the guy who did the sound effects with his mouth. He was always a funny guy. But Moses Hightower, he's a great big dude, man. He a hell of a football player. We're talking Bubba Smith, not Moses Hightower, but he was a great big dude. He was a hell of a football player, but he was funny in those Police Academy movies back in the 80s. So it's happy birthday, or on this day, to him, and happy birthday to Kirby Puckett, born on this day in 1960 in Chicago, Illinois, 10-time All-Star, 2-time World Series champion with the Minnesota Twins. Puckett spent 12 seasons with the Twins, who retired his number 34 in 1997. He's a member of the Baseball Hall of Fame and the Twins Hall of Fame, obviously. And on April 10th, 2010, a statue of Puckett was unveiled outside of Gate 34 in his honor. Depicts the home run in Game 6 of the 1991 World Series. Who can forget that? Puckett passed away at the age of 45 on March the 6th, 2006. Puckett was a hell of a baseball player. The stature, everybody can remember what he was like as a ball player. He ran into some legal problems later on in his life. We don't want to talk ill will about a guy who passed away. But Puckett was a great baseball player, and he was like that Twins World Series in 91 was something to behold. It was a great World Series. That's when I not first started falling in love with baseball, but that's when I really fell in love with the game of baseball. So no, it was he was a great ball player and the like, and it was fun to watch him play. It's too bad he ended up with some legal problems later on in life. Anyways, thank you guys for listening to the show today. Make sure you listen to the other shows that we got going on. Dave and I were down in the tavern last night. Well, he was at home, but we just called it down the tavern, and nobody has to know, right? But it was fun having Dave back on. We had a good talk about the NFL free agency and the quarterbacks, and then the World Baseball Classic. We talked about that, so we kept it. It got a little bit lengthy, but we had a good chat, and it was a lot of fun. So make sure you tune into that one today as well. Thank you every day for tuning into our show. We appreciate it. Like we say every morning, that it's a great to have this kind of support that we're getting. It's getting bigger and bigger every day, so we really appreciate that. Make sure you guys talk to people about the show. Tune in every morning on Facebook Live and on YouTube. YouTube Live. We'll make sure we're getting some more clips and everything else out there. Looking for an intern to maybe do the production side of things, but we'll talk about that on another show another day. We'll put an ad out there for someone to help out with all this crazy stuff we got going on, because she's a lot. Anyways. The 1420 in the morning, brought to you by Barn Burner Hockey and barnburnerhockey.ca. Use promo code 1420BARN at barnburnerhockey.ca. And here's a clip from last night's show. And remember, everybody, it doesn't matter where you are. It's who you're with. Have a good day. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Goal of a Super Bowl.
It stands to reason.
He'd be closer than they are right now.
He's better than Gorgeous Jim. He's better than Trey Lance. No, what's
He's
his
definitely
name?
better than Sam Darnold, who they signed today.
Yeah,
A
you
lot less
bet.
money, obviously, but
But yeah, San Fran seems content without having difference makers at the quarterback position.
and don't win.
And well, but lick the jar consistently. And any given Sunday, like when you're licking the jar every year, like San Francisco's success in the postseason is an absolute head scratcher to me. How those fuckers do seem to do it every other year. They're in the Super Bowl and the NFC Championship game. Like they have something figured out.
The
Excuse me.
the thing that boggles my mind about Lamar Jackson is that he represents himself, so that might hurt him a little bit. But slimy lawyer agents might not be a bad thing to stay away from. And he seems like a quality guy and doesn't have a contract yet for next year. And he bet on himself, got hurt a little bit and everything else. Everybody gets hurt no matter what sport you're in. But Jackson, and I don't think it's collusion. I think that there's a situation where there's a lot of teams that could use Lamar Jackson, but they don't want to give up a couple of draft picks. If they went out, I think it's the 15th, which is Wednesday, they can go out and sign him to a deal that Baltimore could match. Now, and I don't know the ins and outs, so I do a little bit, but it gets long-winded and lawyers speak and everything else and agents speak, so I'm not going to get into it. But you wonder why if a team thinks they're close, which the Jets think they're close, because they have an all-world defense, they actually do. Why they wouldn't go out and make, say, here's